On this episode of ResiWeek, Matter is the new home standard. Apple opens up HomeKit, and 83% of workers prefer hybrid. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 280, Matter Matters.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Draper.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by some of my best friends. First, we have Mr. Mitchell Klein. He is the executive director of the Z-Wave Alliance. How are you, sir?
Doing great, and happy post-COVID, we hope.
Yeah, sort of. We just came out of our third lockdown a little bit, so yeah. I'm waiting on the fourth.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah, well, now we'll go for four. Then we have Marius Malowetsky. He is a customer service and integration at Building 36 and or Alarm.com. How are you doing, Marius?
Very good, Matt. Thanks for having me. And Mitch, I know you were shaking your head. Close enough.
It's really close.
Okay.
I
can
tried.
go with that.
I tried. Then we have Jamie Briesmeister. She is the CEO/boss lady at Integration Controls. How are you, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
Thanks for being here. And last but certainly not least, coming to us directly from a hiking trail, Ian Bryant. He is the VP of Technology, Application, and Workforce at Cedia. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I think we're a little bit outdated on the title, but that's all right.
Do you change your titles again? Send it over to me. We'll update it. It's another one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from MakeUseOf.com. Everything you need to know about Matter, the new smart home standard. What Matter is it is a partnership between Chip, which again is a partnership of Amazon, Apple, Google, Samsung, and the Connectivity Standards Alliance, which you used to know as Zigbee. It is a huge collaboration of products coming together and technologies coming together as a unified standard so that most of those products will finally work together. Mr. Mitchell Klein, it is fantastic that you are here because you are my go-to person for everything in this world of alliances.
I'll take all the flack you can toss my way.
I haven't started the flack yet. Well, yes, I did. I started with Ian. When you're following Matter, obviously the one standard that kind of wasn't involved in that we hear of is Z-Wave. But what does it mean to see all of the other standards kind of come together and talk about having connectivity and interoperability between obviously themselves, but everything else that's out there, including we're assuming Z-Wave?
Yeah, well, first of all, I could get into details and things in the everything you need to know that were actually incorrect, but I won't go there because that'll take another half an hour. But just to fully understand it, that project Connected Home over IP is a subset. You're a member of the Zigbee Alliance, and then you kind of join up with the working group that was developing it. And I think it's really important to understand that the intent is for complete interoperability to make things just work together. And when you say that, you also must understand that there's millions and hundreds of millions of devices out in the marketplaces all around the world that will not be turned off, because in order for the promise of Matter to be realized, all those hundreds of millions of devices must also work within that same Matter platform. And it will. But what we also have to recognize is it's going to start off small with a few things and continue to grow from that point on. So from a Z-Wave perspective, we're thrilled because we've been saying this for 20 years. Things must interoperate. Things must be backwards compatible. Things must be secure. And again, I can go on, and I'd actually let, maybe perhaps my associate here, Mariusz, can really speak to a number of those promises that Z-Wave makes that we expect will be fulfilled through the Matter group as well.
That's a really good question, Marius. When you see this from the Alarm.com standpoint, that's a huge consumer-facing brand. right? When people buy into ADC, they're assuming that all of their smart products are just going to work on that platform. And the majority of them do, but obviously there's always an outlier that doesn't. What does Matter mean to you guys from the ADC side, and to Mitch's point, from the Z-Wave side?
So again, we welcome interoperability. I think that's spot on where the industry needs to go, right? And again, to Mitch's point, we've been there for 20 or so years. And when you look at the market that you enter as a, let's say, security dealer, they come into the house, the last thing they want to say is, oh, by the way, for our system to work, you have to replace your door lock, thermostat, garage door opener. That's not what we do. We would rather focus on getting all those devices work together. So again, interoperable standards are very welcome in our business, right? That allows us to deploy the system much easier and not worry about one-offs.
Yeah, very good. Jamie, my concern every time I see a new standard is we usually have just got our customer base to sort of understand even just the terminology that we're talking about. The second that,
Right.
GAFA starts talking about chip, it's another thing that is, again, part of Matter, et cetera. But it's another phrase, it's another term. Is there anything we can do as integrators to really help our clients understand that? Or is it something that we kind of just need to, again, take the approach of, we're just going to make everything work?
I think our approach should be that we're the filter through which information flows to our clients. And we need to know what's happening. We need to know the trajectory of their system that we're putting in their house. And as much as possible, have our eye to the future. But I don't know if we need to talk about every technology possibility between the standards and what have you, because it'll change, a week later or a month later, or by the time they actually move in. So I think that we need to be aware of this, certainly, and talk amongst ourselves and learn in our industry and let our clients know there's changes on the horizon, similar to, the analog sunset when everything went digital and we went from component to HDMI. There was a transition there, and we knew in our industry that was happening before a lot of consumers.
Yeah.
So we could hold them back by continuing one type of old infrastructure, or we could move them forward in a digital way. So I think that's our approach. Really, I'm excited to see this. Mitch, I've known you've been talking about interoperability since you asked me to volunteer for CEDIA, over almost a decade ago.
Yep.
So I think this is fantastic, really.
Yeah, just let me point out one other thing, Matt, which wasn't mentioned in the article, that, again, to geek out just a little bit, Matter is only an application layer, and it's going to require network and transports and PHYs and all those other aspects. And so for the time being, the group has landed upon Thread, which is basically nothing more than a network standard, and Wi-Fi, which we all know is a network standard. And those two do not interoperate. Yeah. And so in order for that promising, and this is just the beginning of it, they actually have to have this thing that I guess they're calling a border router. We can call it a gateway. You can call it a hub. Essentially, they're all one and the same. And the purpose is, at this point, is to make sure that Thread devices work with Wi-Fi devices. Yeah. And you can easily move on from that and say, okay, and Zigbee devices, and Z-Wave devices, and Bluetooth. So you can see where that's going to go, and that's where the promise is.
Ian, let's wrap this before we move on. My concern every time I see partnerships and alliances and everything else, especially with the big four brands, is that at some point they might get bored and move on. Is that a concern, or is this a big enough entity that we will be less concerned with that?
I think, what the work that Mitch has been doing for so long on interoperability, this whole conversation we're having, the fact that we've got Apple, Google, Amazon, and those people a part of this program is showing you that there is some serious movement behind this and support that will continue to go on for a long time. I personally don't see from being in control systems and integrating homes and trying to get platforms to communicate together. I see this as a very big positive. I wanted to touch on one thing. I know I've heard some concerns of people thinking that this is going to take business or work away from integrators, and in fact, I think it's the exact opposite. That it's going to help the platforms be more connected and allow for more opportunities. And it may be that there's less custom coding on the back end, but means there's more ability to integrate subsystems and there's more design opportunities available. So I think this is a very good opportunity for the industry as a whole.
Add to that, Ian, the fact that customers will have good experiences.
Yep.
And I think that's really important too.
Mitch, let me just ask you this before we move on. What can manufacturers do to bring their existing customers who have, Z-Wave and a variety of devices into this platform?
Well, I mean, I can put on my Silicon Labs hat and say that what we're looking at here really are building blocks. Mm-hmm. And so essentially there'll be a block that will say, okay, Z-Wave, here's how you're going to connect to Matter. Matter, here's how you're going to connect to Z-Wave. So if you're manufacturing Z-Wave products right now, keep on going because you got the best platform that exists with the best ecosystems out there. And yeah, you will be able to work with Matter devices as well. Just a matter of time.
Okay, very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Apple has revealed an evolutionary changes to HomeKit and more at their WWDC Worldwide Developers Conference. The big one being that Siri commands are coming to third-party devices, along with working within kind of the CSA's match program, which again is working through that thread language. Marius, let me start with you on this one. When we see Apple finally, like they've worked with other manufacturers, they've worked with other standards, but this is a continued aggressive push for Apple to work with other standards. Is this something that we see them continuing to play with, or is this kind of a one-off dip their toes in?
No, I think Apple is a very interesting company, right? When you look at it, they're usually not the first one to do something. But, if you look at my house, most of the stuff is Apple. I do have a couple Echoes as well, right? But when they decide to enter, they enter with, their own twists. So I think that opening it up is absolutely what's needed for them to be more successful. And also, Amazon is a big player in the voice industry, right? So. Mm-hmm. By adding that layer of products from many different manufacturers, right? They're building up their ecosystem, and soon after they'll open that to Matter. They'll open up to other devices as well. So I think it's about time.
Jamie, when you're following what Apple's been doing with this, the kind of one of the biggest takeaways that I've had with it is not so much the technology that they're implementing, although that's very, very cool and very groundbreaking for them. It's the power that they have from a marketing engine. They can take something that we've preached for years and make it a commonplace ask from our customer base. Is that something that we as an industry should try and leverage more?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When the iPhone, right, when it first came out, and integrators freaked out because they couldn't sell touch panels anymore at $15,000 a pop. Well, find another way. Obviously, they've not gone away. I think that Apple has made a pretty good staked a pretty good flag in this market, and they have a device that does so much already. We can only really expect it to continue to do more. It's a computer that also
Mm-hmm.
makes phone calls. So, I mean,
Sure.
let's, and at least a smartphone, and then, extending that into the television world. The part in this article I thought was really wild was the SharePlay video
Mm-hmm.
conferencing concept with FaceTime kind of, changing it and being able to have a FaceTime call from a non-Apple device. And that SharePlay concept is interesting. I had a client who had a somewhat elaborate control system set up so they could have a variety of these screens happening when their children were FaceTiming and gaming continuously. And now it's like, you can do that and watch at the same time. It's such an interesting way to interact as people. And last year proved that we can do this more often. So I'm going to continue to see advances like this for sure.
Ian, let me come over to you with that. I find this a interesting push for a multitude of reasons, but specifically, Teams and Zoom have owned the commercial space for the last 5 years, right? And obviously the pandemic brought that to the forefront. But they, Zoom was edging out the established industry for a long time. Apple with FaceTime has been phenomenal, but not really seen in a business sense. This is a huge play for Apple going after that SMB and that work from home market. Do they have and I'm a big believer in Apple's power, but do they have the power to become a viable player against Zoom or Teams?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I found so interesting about the WWDC conference was an hour and a half of just nothing but software announcements. I mean, it's definitely an eye opener when they don't release a single piece of hardware, and some of their software advancements are considered groundbreaking. I know there was some concern over some of the things they took from other developers. I've read some articles of people a little upset that some of the ideas were already apps that had been utilized from third-party people that they've kind of implemented themselves. But what I'm seeing is Apple making a conscious decision, similar to other platforms, to broaden their software availability. And as far as the video conferencing is concerned, I think they're starting off small with they've had FaceTime for a while. Now they're embracing some of the SMB, and we're talking really, really, really small that don't have security protocols, networking teams where you can get away with these kind of things. But I wouldn't be surprised soon that they start releasing a very robust video or conferencing, either software and hardware for the larger businesses as they're trying to get more into the commercial space. I think they realized that just putting out a new iPhone every year or every 9 months or however long it is not the future, and the future is diversifying and getting more into the software side of it.
And one thing I would add, if I could, Matt, it's going back to interoperability, right? And taking an example of my son, who's 13 years old, plays Minecraft, right? At the same time has his phone open, and he's talking to his friends over FaceTime, right? What happens if you have Android phone, right? So I think there's a big market push for interoperability. It's been there for years, but it's becoming more and more, right? And I think Apple is recognizing it, and slowly that trickles to other things as well.
Mitch, that's a real key point. Is Apple has in the last 2 years really pushed interoperability, whereas in the past they were a really strong walled garden. What does it mean to the industry as a whole to see players like Apple, and then obviously, back to our previous conversation about Matter, these are a lot of industries and companies that were happy to play in their own space, and you're now seeing them broaden beyond that.
Yeah, this is a prove it to me moment. I know they're all playing nice according to the press releases and so on. Are they really playing that nice in the meetings? And even more importantly, Amazon has already launched Sidewalk. How will Sidewalk play into that? Apple's still committed to HomeKit. So there's still a lot of potential divisive technologies out there that play to those walled gardens. And so the real question is going to be, with the promise of Matter, and it's an amazing promise, and Mariusz and I are both going, this is awesome. Will the promise actually be realized, and will they work together? Don't know. Yeah.
Mitch, that's a really good point, right? Because if you just look back maybe a couple months, maybe 8-9 months ago, the Edge router wasn't, that heavily promoted within the Matter spec. Right now, it's a fully open. You can add other technologies as you see it fit, right? Back a couple months, maybe a year ago, we were kind of thinking, would it happen? Will it happen or will not? So, yeah, we're like where it is right now.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. Fun to watch. All right, let's hit our last story of the day. This comes to us from CE Pro. Research is showing that 83% of employees prefer the hybrid work model. Now, the fun part is Mr. Klein sent us another article about the great resignation wave coming for companies, where up to 40% of workers, employees, are thinking about quitting their jobs, in part because they don't want to go back to work at the office. Not they don't want to go back to work, but they don't want to go back to work at the office. To pull from the Apple side of it as well, last week, Tim Cook announced a 3-day work week that was mandatory across the board for Apple, to some notable press, and then, of course, a lovely internal employee memo that got mysteriously leaked with a boatload of employees saying that they are very unhappy with this. Jamie, this is an entertaining story to hit on because it does play to us as people in general and just having to live with work, but it also has a big tech aspect as well. What can we do as residential integrators to continue to assist and maybe even help some of our C-level clients with some, let's call it unbiased direction with how to achieve a good work-life balance from at least a tech standpoint?
From a tech standpoint, well, if I had a good balance, I'd be rich. But I think what we can do is meet our clients where they are and ask them what they need, just like we have been, right? And the most interesting thing is that we have a shared experience. We all experienced 2020 differently, but it was a shared moment, and we can reflect on that, on what changed. And for a lot of our C-level clients, how do you plan to go back to work? What are your intentions for your employees that you have to manage or run? And then meet them in the middle, or meet them, where they are, providing a really good network for what has to come next. I'm at home still. I go back and forth in between the office. It's more a factor of time at this point, and managing people more efficiently, and having that work-life balance of being able to see my kid in the morning and know that he's not gaming the entire time that I'm working.
I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's doing schoolwork.
No, he's not. He's gaming his head off right now. He enjoys Minecraft, right. Like Mariusz there. But he's taken a 3-week break and studying chemistry at some point in the summer. So I'm, what can I say?
Very good. Ian, so I come at this in two ways. One, I think this is a great opportunity for integrators to continue to provide solutions. But from my own company experience, I've discovered that end users have a desire to do something. Companies and corporate have a desire to standardize something, and they really can't match that up. Is this the perfect opportunity for residential integrators to play in that, and I'm going to say it, and I hate the fact that I'm going to say it, to play in that resi-mercial space? I'm sorry. It goes against everything I believe in. But to play in that space and help some of our SMB clients create a process for how, because up till now we've done it ad hoc. We've just tried to help people work. But there now comes a time of they're either going to go back to the office, or they're not going to go back to the office, or they're going to go back to the office in part. And they probably need a proper setup so that they're not sitting at their kitchen table. And I think we are best served, more than our friends over on the Avixa side of the table, to go ahead and help create a plan.
Yeah, no, and in fact, I love where of all the things, the horrible things that the pandemic, that came out of the pandemic, there is some pretty cool stuff happening, and this is actually one of them. I'm really passionate about this topic. I spent a decade in residential and a decade in commercial, and the opportunities that are in front of integrators right now are tremendous. As far as the work from home and providing a proper environment for someone, depending on the size of company they work in, they may need a lot more engagement you may engage more with the company itself to make sure you're getting the proper, if it's, video conferencing system, there are some small setups that can be used in small offices. You want to make sure that they're getting ported into the business network. There's talk of now companies doing separate networks just for the business use so that it's a secure environment. But what is also really exciting, it's not going to happen immediately, but what I'm seeing is those companies that are going to a hybrid work environment that had small huddle spaces, small conference room and meeting spaces that had no technology are going to all have to be required to now have technology in them, because there will be someone working remote. Almost with every single department, someone's going to be remote. And so when you used to have just the ability to do a quick stand-up meeting with everyone in the office, those days are probably gone, and that there will always be someone virtual. So there is some really awesome potential projects for whether you're all commercial or you do residential and you want to get into commercial. These are great opportunities. I would work closely with your homeowner customers to ask them about what their plans are, how they plan on working going forward. See if you can get introduced to the company to assist in that, and it's a way to get you involved and possibly to get some more work in the long road. It's I can't stress it enough, the amount of opportunities that are going to be presented in the next 1 to 2 years for integrators, commercial and residential. It's amazing.
Yep. Yeah, it's huge. Mitch, you sent that wonderful article about employees just downright quitting. How much of that is attributed to the lack of desire to go back to work in an office setting? How much of it is attributed to the feeling that employees are not, that their needs aren't being met appropriately, that they feel they're very comfortable at home and they're working effectively at home, and somebody's saying, "Get back to work, you bum."
Yeah, I have no opinions on those subjects.
That's why I asked you.
But before I get to what I think about the whole thing, just the second article, which was off of Axios, and
Yes.
all these different articles are based on different research. So we'd have to look into the research and figure out who they spoke with, et cetera. But according to Axios, upwards of 40% of employees are going to leave their jobs. So there's 5 of us on the call right now. Which 2 are leaving? I mean, right? But I know all the hands go up. But okay, overall, my take on all of it, we can sift through all the arguments. But bottom line is I see 2 things. Love your job and love your life. And that's what this is all about. And employees have had the opportunity to experience that love of life and love of job. And if it doesn't hit, they're going to find something else to love. And I think it's that simple. It's not about the technology. It's not about any of that stuff. Do you love what you do, and do you love your life?
So, Marius, let's wrap this up with you. When you see clients talk about this, and maybe you guys are dealing with it corporately at alarm.com as well, if you have someone who loves their job and they love their life, how do you go about ensuring that your employees have everything they need, whether they're in the office or not? And I think, as a sidebar, I think that's the big thing that's been overlooked in this, is there was a lot of employees that were working in a lot of jobs that didn't have the right tech at their desk, at their office. They're just realizing it now because they're at home and they really don't have it. But how do you go about making sure that your employees have the right tech that they need?
So that's a really good question. And, I happened to switch jobs right when the pandemic hit last year in March, right? I joined alarm.com. And what I found with that company, with alarm.com, is, flexibility and their care for their employees. right? So every month there is an email going out and asking, what do you guys need? What can we do to make things better? You working remotely, you working off your coach. So, flexibility is one of the biggest things that is being promoted right now. Yes, we do have a set date on when you come back to work, but nobody's telling you have to show up for 3 days and be there at your desk. It all depends on what kind of work you do. If you with customer success, if you in sales organization, do you have to go to the office every day? You would rather spend that time with customer, right? And going back to tech, super important, right? We went through 3 different platforms in terms of video conferencing, right? So making sure that the employees have the right stuff, that they have the setup, that they can communicate effectively, I think will go the long way in ensuring that they're happy and they stay. And that's what we see at alarm.com.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap it there. As a side note, a footnote, registration for CEDIA Expo is now open. That's going to happen September 1st through the 3rd. The full pre-conference starts on the 31st of August in lovely Indianapolis, Indiana. So go register. I'll be there as long as I can get across the border. Yeah, because Canada. All right. Thank you all again for joining us. Ian, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CEDIA, where can they do that?
Go to cedia.net, and you can contact me at ibryant@cedia.org.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Briesmeister, if people want to connect with you, learn more about integration controls, where can they do that?
Sure. All of our social handles are Control STL. So on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, I believe. And then look me up. I'm on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
Just make sure you spell it correctly.
It's always the fun one. I have to say the same thing. You'd be amazed. Marius, thank you, sir, for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Building 36 or Alarm.com, where can they do that?
Everywhere where social media is present, Facebook, Instagram, Pinchart, whatever, right? We're there. We're all over the place, and we service our customers.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Klein, thank you for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about the Z-Wave Alliance, where can they do that?
Hey, it's always a pleasure, and I love being on this event with you and certainly with Jamie, Ian, and Mariusz. You can reach me at CEDIA because I'll be there. Hopefully you'll be coming to CEDIA too. Indianapolis is a great place for an organization. So, yeah, Matt, I'm pulling for you to get there too. Anyway, it's Mitch at zwavealliance.org, or you can find me on Twitter at Mitchell_Klein.
I heard you buying dinner in Indy, right? San Elmo's, right?
At least one, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.